Jimmy Atchison just wanted to make it. Nicknamed LJ, the 21-year-old grew up on the west side of Atlanta with family hailing from the Adamsville community, the same neighborhood that boasts Killer Mike, the Cascade skating rink, and current Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens as his favorite natives. On the west side of Atlanta, Atchison played sports, basketball, and football in particular before taking a liking to music. His little sister, Ashanti Atchison, told the Carter Media Group he recorded so much that it made her want to do music herself. Jimmy was a part of a rap group called OTG, which stands for Only the Gang. Gang in this course is just slang for Frank. OTG wasn't just a group of young adults who had a delusional dream, however. The collective's work ethic showed, and they had motion around the hip-hop capital of the world. I'm talking 16,000 Instagram followers, thousands of views on YouTube, a trip to the Streets 945 radio station, a performance at 2 Chainz Escobar Lounge off Peter Street in the heart of downtown Atlanta, and an album release party at Club Bankhead hosted by the one, the only, Swampism.
My Lord G, Jimmy the Young God, DJ Swampism.
Yeah, that guy.
I'm in a 4x4, yeah, I got my wrist up.
From my outsider's unbiased point of view, LJ had the most promise out of any artist in OTG. Yes, he could rap with certain aggression, making the listener feel every single word he said, but he could also lean more melodic, if need be. His melodies rang through lyrics of plight he faced in the struggle of trying to make it out of the west side of Atlanta, ultimately to better a life for himself and his loved ones. OTG's overall message in their music was about partying, looking for getaways from the reality of the trauma they faced in their upbringings, and taking a strong dislike to anyone who attempted to get in their way of preventing them from reaching their goals. In other words, they really hated the ops. LJ's family described him as a young man full of jokes and laughter. He could make anyone mad 1 minute and laugh in the next. In his spare time, he fed the homeless without people knowing around the city and just wanted people to. LJ loved a lot of things in life, but 3 in particular stand out. He loved his grandmother, he loved rapping, and he loved sports. Despite being a father of 2 kids and presented to the world with the serious posture and the physical build of a former athlete, LJ was still just a young man trying to figure life out. He walked around with a pocket-sized book of Psalms and Proverbs for every day of his life except for one. This brings us to January 2019. Around this period, LJ was connected to a woman named Kelly Brogan. Kelly had a clothing line and LJ was looped in to help distribute and sell the product. One day, much of Kelly's product just vanished and she asked LJ if he knew anything about the theft. LJ said he didn't want to get in between any of what was going on, and then he asked to borrow Kelly's phone. Once Kelly gave him the phone, he walked away. 3 days later, Kelly filed a police report and claimed that it was LJ who robbed her while being armed. He now had a warrant out for his arrest. Much to his confusion, LJ was waiting for a nearby birthday celebration before he planned to turn himself in after the warrant was issued. On January 22nd, 2019, the Atlanta Police Department came to LJ's apartment complex, banging on the front door and demanding for somebody to open. At this point, the only word on the alleged robbery was Kelly's. LJ was not given his fair due process to give his side of the story or even had an opportunity to prove his innocence. Other family members in the apartment were ordered to leave, and APD bulldozed into the apartment's military style. LJ fled the scene, and then he hid into a closet. The officers located him in a closet and spotted his eye pupil sticking out between sheets. APD officer Sung Kim then aimed below LJ's pupil and fired. Jimmy Atchison's life, his promising music career, entrepreneurial ventures, and fatherhood journey all ended at that moment at just 21 years old. APD did not discipline Kim, but 9 months later in October 2019, Kim announced his retirement after 26 years of service. LJ was unarmed and was surrendering at the time when Kim fired. The result was a pain that was all too familiar for LJ's family. His father, Jimmy Hill, buried his other son, Curtis Jordan, at the age of 18 in 2012. Jordan was a victim of senseless violence. LJ's mother, Cynthia Atchison, took to the front lines to advocate for their son's justice every single day following the tragedy. The pain turned out to be just too much for Cynthia, and she died of a broken heart at the age of 52 on May 19th, 2022.
His mother, not with us now, because of the heartache and pain of losing her son. People don't talk about and understand the devastating effect this has on a family.
Jimmy Hill is currently wheelchair bound, wearing a boot after breaking his ankle. He's been in and out of the hospital for the past couple of years with various health issues, including problems with his prostate. One night, he admitted that he even asked the Lord to take him, and that he's neglected his personal health over the past few years fighting for justice for his son. When Hill lost his first son in 2012, he wanted street justice. He grew up in trouble often, and he wanted to get back in his old ways when his own community took his son away from him as a teenager. Hill's mom talked him off the ledge and convinced him to fight for justice through court instead of physically taking matters into his own hands. Now, 13 years later, in the same predicament, fighting for justice for his second son.
Stop murdering our children. Stop murdering our brothers and sisters. Stop murdering our mothers and fathers. Stop murdering our family and friends. Stop murdering our people. Stop the murder. Stop the murder. Stop the murder. And let's see justice done here and now. Yes.
Hill has been working relentlessly for 6 years to make sure the case doesn't fall on the wayside with time. Hill has been featured in multiple national stories ranging from CNN to MSNBC and various reports on local news outlets. However, this past Saturday at a prayer vigil for Atchison, 5 years after citizens of the world crowded various streets to protest against police brutality, targeting the overall unfair treatment of the Black community, after a revelation that the Black Lives Matter organization used a lot of the funds for personal gain and to live a luxurious lifestyle, after camera crews left the scenes throughout the country one by one, and the news cycle centered to the next hottest topic, only a handful of activists and family members showed up for Hill in Atchison on Saturday, May 31st, 2025. However, someone who just happened to be in the area at the same time was the Reverend Dr. Bernice King. This was Hill's first time meeting the Harris to Atlanta royalty herself, and after posing for a photo op, he immediately asked her if she was aware of his son's legal case. Bernice replied that she's seen Hill's emails to her in the past, and he reminded her of the Reverend William Barber II. Hill said his unplanned meeting with Bernice was just quote-unquote God's timing, and that he was appreciative of people like Rabbi Peter for showing up because a lot of Black pastors haven't been as consistent in supporting him in his fight for justice over the past 6 years. Hill always remembers his main fight. He remembers it when Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis used a large portion of resources to pursue RICO charges against Young Thug and YSL instead of his son's situation that has been lingering for 3 years at that point. Thug was arrested in May 2022, and after Hill's protest, Willis eventually indicted Kim back in December 2022. Kim soon received a $50,000 bond.
But I was hearing what was going on, the inconsistency of the officers. So one officer said, my son raised his right hand. Another officer said, my son raised his right hand in the form of a gun. Another officer said, my son raised both hands together. I mean, damn, how many stories you gonna tell so you can see the blue wall of the south? Exactly. So when I went to court, I think when it was last month, whenever we went to court last month, and I made a gesture, and the guard said something to me because, you know, when I was here seeing this man lying on his stand, and the officer said that he said, show your hands, and he said, free, don't move. You know, I'm just hearing all these lies being told, and I got emotional, and it caught me, and I just caught, I man your hand, and I just made a statement, and they had to tell me about, you know, busting out like that to make your hand just in court, but that's my son. That's my son. You took his life, and you're gonna sit up there, you're gonna lie in my face, and the thing what is, you knew you were going in a Black neighborhood because they went military style at 8 o'clock in the morning. You knew you was in a Black neighborhood. You knew you my son didn't have nowhere to go. He was in a small closet, back like this, that's how small the closet was, with just a few clothes. There wasn't like no pile of clothes on. You went in the room, the officer had Why did you let the officer with the shield go in the room?
Exactly.
Now remind yourself, this is an officer with a 26-year history of being overly aggressive and disobeying orders. So, and now the police can't hold them accountable. So why the hell you let your federal tactical? They just get them like this. Anyway, this man said he built up his clothes. And then he said it. He didn't know my son was under there. He said he seen a white eyeball. A white eyeball, and then he said he seen a hand move and he shot. And that could have been a 7-year-old kid. That just show you the devaluation of what he thought about Black lives. And, and guess where he shot? He shot my son one time below the eye where the white eyeball was. Scattered and shot in his brain. That's where he shot him at. Right here below the eye where the eyeball where he shot. So, and the other 3 officers in the room when nobody else shoot. Because they felt there wasn't no need to shoot.
Exactly.
And they felt it was because there wasn't nobody's life was threatened. My son would have had so many bullet holes in him if they thought there wasn't no cell phone, wasn't no ink pen, wasn't that. And so when you fight in state court, even though Fulton County grand jury indicted him and charged him with felony murder, aggravated assault, violation of oath. When you fight in state court, the federal court, it's an entirely different thing. You got to cross every single dot. There's a lot of admissions that they won't let they be entered. And you got to cross every T. But you know what? I had to stop saying this in the hand of a federal judge, and I had to start saying this in the hand of God.
In God, yes.
Amen. God is able to do anything at any given time. And he can do anything but lie or fail.
Yes.
And I really don't believe God on federal. And I'm going to speak the word. You know, if life and death is in the power of the tongue, I'm going to speak
Yes.
He remembers when Demetrius Spence made a false 911 call that led to the death of young Scooter in March 2025 before being immediately arrested 5 days later. Whereas Kelly has never even been subpoenaed after filing a false report to authorities stating that LJ robbed her while he was armed, despite the fact that LJ wasn't even armed at the very moment he lost his life. A witness came out and straight up said that LJ was never involved with the robbery directly tied to Kelly. Hill remembers his own encounter with law enforcement. In 1985, APD's oatmeal operation attempted to take his life. Hill was being arrested for a marijuana charge, and the cops choked him to the point where he urinated himself and blood and snot came out of his nose. When he told officers he couldn't breathe, he said it felt like the grip just got tighter and tighter on him. When he was handcuffed and his face was planted on the ground, Hill recalls the officers kicking him. Hill thinks about that experience often, and he often recalls him preaching to his sons not to run from the police. The one time LJ did run from the police was the one day he also didn't have his pocket-sized book of Proverbs and Psalms in his pocket. It's a moment Hill has had to relive each and every single day of the past 6 years with no justice for his son. All of the officers who were in the apartment the day LJ's life tragically ended have since left APD. Now, in between the hazy uncertainty of future court dates, Hill just prays justice is served for his black son.